It's time for another Baltimore Ravens mock draft Monday. We dive into that, DK Metcalf, and more next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms, and we are back. It is a Monday edition of the show, and this Monday edition of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline, as we covered this season, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And this is another mock draft Monday episode here, and it's going to be one that's going to be really fun to talk about because it's more of like an unconventional one for me, where I didn't necessarily go with a huge need for the Ravens, and I've been trying again over the course of these last few mock drafts to really switch things up and not really talk about the same prospects every single week, because that gets a little boring. So we're switching it up. Another great mock draft that I did for Mock Draft Sunday. We'll talk about it here in the second segment. And in the third segment, of course, getting into some of your mock drafts from Twitter. In the first segment, though, we have some DK Metcalf to talk about, because there have been rumors swirling that Metcalf could be had at the right price, and it potentially maybe makes sense for the Ravens to go after Metcalf in some instances. So talking about just how that would make sense, why it would, why it wouldn't, the pros and the cons. And this won't be our only DK Metcalf conversation throughout the course of this week. So if you want to stay tuned for those, I implore you to subscribe or like the video. And speaking of that, if you are here with us on YouTube, you can see my face in my background and everything. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We have over 1,000 now. Our next goal is 2,000. We're building a really awesome community here at Locked On Ravens, and it will be great if we can get as many people as possible. If you subscribe, you like the video on YouTube, it helps grow out the community and also put it in front of more Ravens fans. And also, if you hear an audio form, so Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, be sure to follow us on there so notifications on our content comes out Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So if you like daily Baltimore Ravens content, subscribe and follow for sure. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at KOstriker34, the Locked On Ravens account as well at Locked On Ravens. Let's dive into this now. DK Metcalf conversation before getting into mock draft Monday. So there have been rumors and reports out there saying that DK Metcalf could potentially be had at the right price, even though Seattle is saying that he is not available for trade. And so obviously this got a lot of Ravens Twitter going and saying, hey, DK Metcalf to Baltimore, DK Metcalf to Baltimore. Lamar Jackson beginning his recruitment of DK Metcalf, posting a picture of him and Metcalf together with Metcalf photoshopped in the Ravens jersey, of course, and made it clear in his post that, he likes his guys, he likes his receivers, but he says they welcome everybody. So a nice little post there from Lamar Jackson. But again, this is kind of some of the same conversation we had surrounding Tyreek Hill. Now, it's not exactly the same. Tyreek Hill, right at this moment, is under a huge contract. Metcalf is not there yet, but is going to get there. So that's one of the things you have to weigh here. Do you want to invest that much capital and or money in a wide receiver that you know that if you give up, let's say a first four or a second four or a significant package, then it becomes the leverage game, and the Ravens probably would not want to let that person walk, regardless of who it is. If the Ravens gave up a huge package for someone for a 1-year rental, 2-year rental, let's say, they're not going to want that person to walk in a couple years because they gave up the assets to acquire that person. They want them there for the long haul. So if that were to be Metcalf, they would want to probably sign him to that extension. Now, let's start on the field. DK Metcalf on the field would make this offense almost unstoppable. He is one of the best young wide receivers in this NFL right now. 3 years in the league. He's almost had 3,000-yard seasons, had 900 in 2019, 1,303 in 2020, and 967 in 2021. And touchdown-wise, 29 touchdowns over 3 seasons. That touchdown output, his output has increased every single year. 7 in 2019, 10 in 2020, 12 in 2021. He's a big body receiver, 6'4", 235. What have we talked about here on Locked On Ravens for the past couple months? What type of receiver do the Ravens need? It's that big body receiver. Metcalf fills that need beautifully. He's already established himself. He isn't necessarily still trying to find his footing. He's one of the better athletes in this league. I mean, you just look at a picture at him. He's ripped. I mean, he's an amazing athlete, and putting him in this offense with obviously Lamar Jackson, another target for Lamar Jackson to throw to, Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Tyler Wallace, etc. That receiving core becomes one of the best in the NFL. And obviously, I'm not saying it is the best. There are better receiving cores in the NFL, but compared to what it was without Metcalf, or what it would be without Metcalf compared to what it would be with him, you can see the difference there. And this is not me saying, oh, Marquise Brown isn't good enough or Rashad Bateman isn't good enough. I also like Lamar Jackson, like the Ravens guys right now. But it becomes the question of, is wide receiver the biggest need on this team right now? No, it's not. In recent off seasons previous to this one, yeah, absolutely. It was a huge need for them. But now we enter this 2020, or at least we enter this 2022 off season with more of the edge need and the cornerback need. And that's where, people saw this Ravens team needing additions. It wasn't necessarily, all right, they have to go out and sign 10 million wide receivers, but there is always room for improvement at every position, or at least most on an NFL roster. The Ravens, if they were to go after Metcalf, have that opportunity. And it wouldn't necessarily shock me if they were at least involved in these discussions, and if they ultimately made a move for him. Now, again, the contract part of this is going to be kind of big, because we have seen over the past month the big wide receiver contracts that guys like Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill have gotten. And DK Metcalf, again, one of the best young receivers in the NFL, for a Ravens team that runs the ball more than they throw it at this point, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it is. But for a team that maybe doesn't value receivers as much as other teams, and I know that might be a bad way to put it. I know they do value receivers, but they just don't maybe use them as often as some of these other teams. I mean, before 2020s in both 2019 and 2020 had the least amount of pass attempts in the NFL. So, 2021 was a different story. The offense was kind of banged up, but that kind of forced them to throw a little bit more. So they were up in the top 10 of pass attempts. But again, we need to see, I think, what this team is in terms of a passing offense. And if they acquire a player like DK Metcalf, you can't just have him out there running routes and just, doing cardio, right? He has to be able to make an impact on the game. And I'm confident that if that were the case, if the Ravens were to go out there and acquire DK Metcalf, they could use him. They could utilize him in a lot of different ways to, I think, maximize his potential. I know that there has been a lot of flack thrown at Greg Roman, especially during the Tyreek Hill situation, where I was like, well, how's Greg Roman going to use Tyreek Hill? Like, there's no point. I don't know. I feel like the passing offense, to me, at least improved over the first half of the season, and obviously took a pretty big step back in the second half for multiple reasons. But the Ravens, they have now missed out on Zadarius Smith. They have missed out on Bobby Wagner. Some other free agents are beginning to sign. Where is your impact piece? Is it Jadeveon Clowney? Is it Stephon Gilmore? Who is the piece for the Ravens to say, yeah, we see what you're doing, AFC. We're gonna one up you, and we're gonna do this. And that's not necessarily me saying, well, the Ravens have to be followers, and they have to follow these AFC teams, and they have to trade assets because other teams traded assets. The Ravens are gonna do what they want to do. They're not gonna follow any team. If they feel like DK Metcalf's the best fit for their roster, they're gonna go out there and try to get him. If they don't, and they feel like they're confident in their guys, they're going to sit back and let that market play out and maybe see what happens with it. And there's not even a guarantee that Metcalf gets traded whatsoever. Obviously, with a team in Seattle that just traded away Russell Wilson, just got rid of Bobby Wagner, they're in kind of like a softish rebuild mode, kind of. So you got to take that and say, well, it's kind of possible Metcalf could be available. So at the end of the day, I think this addition would make the Ravens offense better. What would I give up for Metcalf? Well, it's what is the right price? That's the rumor, right? At the right price, what is that? To me, at this point, I'm probably not giving up 14. I mean, we've seen talented receivers like Tyreek Hill go for a lot, and Metcalf, I'm probably trading, starting with a second and a couple more picks attached to that. Would Seattle take that? I don't know, but it's how desperate, right? How desperate is each team? How desperate is Seattle? How desperate is Baltimore? I think you go out there and trade high assets, but I think 14 right now to this team is too important to trade away. For a player like Metcalf, I think it would be worth it in the grand scheme of things. But I just think for now, having that 14th pick, if you're Baltimore, getting a player under team control for at least 4, potentially 5 with the 5th-year option, That's a lot. So I'm probably starting with second round pick. Maybe you can throw a second next year or a third, whatever it may be. You're going to have to probably, if you take that route, give up multiple high mid-round picks and maybe another like third in 2023. But, it depends what the Ravens going to do contractually with all these players. Obviously, Lamar Jackson and everything with him. Marquise Brown coming up. They have a couple other guys they could potentially restructure. You have to keep that Metcalf extension in the back of your head if you're the Ravens are going to make that move. And I'm interested to see if anything comes out of this because, obviously nothing could. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe something comes out of it. We'll head into our first break here, though. Still a lot to talk about, though. We'll talk about my mock draft that I did for the show today on Mock Draft Sunday yesterday. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But first, our next partner, they have a great product, and it's a product I use every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because I really like promoting healthy lifestyle, and it's something that's very important to me to keep my health in check and keep it in good standing. And there's a lot that goes into that, and Athletic Greens is one of those things. So what actually is it? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're actually absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. And there are a bunch of benefits to it. And for AG1, it's a small micro habit with big benefits. And it's really the only thing or one of the things you can do every day to take care of yourself. And it's really important to also know that it's lifestyle friendly. So whether you eat vegan or dairy free or gluten free, it fits all of those lifestyles. And also, they have a ton of different testimonials. Over 7,000 5-star reviews recommended by professional athletes. Everybody's getting in on this stuff, and I highly recommend it. But right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially headlining into flu and cold season. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutrition insurance. Also, BetOnline, the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. We have the national championship for the March Madness tournament coming up. Again, wasn't great for me. I took Gonzaga and Illinois in the finals, and it was just it was painful to say the least. But you can still bet on a ton of different events, including the Masters Championships. You can do NBA games. Those are coming to a close, and Nuggets fighting for the 6th seed and trying to stay out of that play-in tournament. So I'm hoping that is the case. Also, Nikola Jokic is still vying for that MVP. So be sure to head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still hanging out with you here. And it's time for Mock Draft Monday. And so the mock draft that I did, again, a little bit more unconventional. I don't really necessarily know. Look, I would be on board with my first pick, but it's not a need for the Ravens compared to other areas on the roster at this moment. And so, speaking of that, my first pick for the Ravens at number 14, starting off really quickly, Devin Lloyd, linebacker from Utah, inside linebacker. Now, Lloyd has been compared to Micah Parsons by some, kind of that hybrid inside-outside linebacker guy. You can line him up in many different places. We know the Ravens love their versatility. He's 6'3", 237. And, really, just he's an athlete. He is an athlete. The Ravens, as we've seen over the past couple of seasons, love those athletes. And so right now, he's a player that I think can play all 3 downs. But I think most kind of heading into this year, this last year, thought of him as a 2-down linebacker. He did a lot in 2021 to help his case, but he can rush inside and outside. Seriously, you can line him up all over the place. He can remain on the field on 3rd down. He's good now in passing downs. He's really improved in that area. He's a good tackler too, and he's also a thumper who is a physical player overall. And slotting him in next to a Patrick Queen or moving him all around the defense in a hybrid role, can't really go wrong with a player like Devin Lloyd. I think one of the key things for me with him is he worth that pick over a player like Jermaine Johnson or Sauce Gardner? To me, that answer is no right now for the Ravens. I think that those and a couple others, you just take the need and the talent. But I think if the board maybe doesn't fall the way the Ravens might want with those needs, and there's a player like Lloyd available who's kind of like that hybrid wildcard type guy, I think they could really use a player like him on their roster. They could find different places. Mike McDonald, it's another chess piece for Mike McDonald to use in that defense. So personally, I like Devin Lloyd a lot. Would I take him over a corner or an edge that's one of the top talents? No. But I think, again, if the board doesn't fall the way you want to, Devin Lloyd would be a nice, I don't even want to call him a fallback option because he's that good, but he'd be a nice option if the board doesn't fall the way the Ravens want. So that's my pick at number 14. Number 45, I feel like this one's going to make a lot of people happy. I'm finally on this train now. Ready for this? George Pickens, wide receiver out of Georgia. Now, I've been slowly getting on this train, right? You might have been with me during my first couple mock draft Mondays where I'm saying there's no way the Ravens take a wide receiver early, and I'm not on that train. I don't want it. Well, now that I've been able to think about it, kind of figure out how free agency is gone, what the needs might be, the Ravens do need another wide receiver on this roster. And whether that is a veteran, whether that is a draft pick, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if the Ravens took a player like George Pickens here at 45. I mean, Pickens is a 6'3", 200-pound player. What do the Ravens need? A big body, physical receiver. He fits that profile really perfectly and also gives you a lot of speed and agility as well as a lot of body control. Now, he's not necessarily going to be like a stalk blocker, but there are viral clips of him just like bulldozing over corners and just like pushing them to the ground. And it's like, yeah, like it gets everybody pumped up. And it's really cool to see. Like he is a physical blocker, but he's not necessarily like a top of the line stalk block type player. And so he's not necessarily the biggest player. I mean, his height, yes, but he's a little bit wiry, a little bit thin. So he can be out physical a little bit in that area. But he also, I mean, look, he plays much above his weight. So I really like that out of him. Also, I mean, the catch radius out of George Pickens is unbelievable. I mean, he's a great hands catcher. That's what you want out of a player that you're looking at, like a big body, go up there, get the football, red zone threat, right? That's what you want out of that type of player. It's what the Ravens want Miles Boykin to be. So he's a matchup problem in a couple of different areas too. I mean, watching him do slants, watching him do fades. I mean, he can beat corners, he can beat linebackers, he can beat a lot of players using that speed that he has. A couple of injury concerns, but look, for me, I am on the George Pickens train now. Sign me up. If that's a second round pick for the Ravens, you add him to this wide receiver core, you go from there and you figure it out. And I think that's a fine strategy for me. Number 76, Nicholas Petit Ferrer, the offensive tackle out of The Ohio State University, 6'5", 316. And look, he's a starting tackle in the NFL. I really do believe that. I was actually surprised he was available for me at 76, so I had to jump on that. He's one of the mid-tier offensive tackles I really like. Also like Rasheed Walker, who we talked about. Abraham Lucas is another one. There are a few others in that tier as well. Like Daniel Fleury kind of is more in the upper tier of that, but still. So for Petit Ferrer in particular, he is a very physical player, and he's also an athlete. So he goes and does a lot of things well, and technically he can improve in a couple of areas, like with footwork potentially, and I mean, just the blend that he offers, the size, the speed, the athleticism, the strength. I mean, he has it all in one. It's just, I think it's coachable things that he can improve on. And when you get that, when it's not like an athletic limitation where you can't really do anything with a ton except a bunch of training and other stuff that like literally players can't do because they just can't do athletically. I think some of these technique things, you can take a chance on a player like Petit Ferrer at 76. You can start Morgan Moses. Hopefully Ronnie Stanley's healthy, but if he's not, you can have a player who I think projects pretty favorably to either side. So either left tackle if Stanley's not healthy, maybe right tackle if Moses gets injured. I think it is a great insurance policy on the offensive line for the Ravens and a player who can step in and maybe be the right tackle of the future if all goes well for the Ravens. So I think it is important the Ravens do get offensive tackle depth decently early, maybe first 2 days, maybe fifth round at the very least. I think Petit Ferrer is someone who can do that for them. 100. I took Matthew Butler, interior defensive lineman out of Tennessee. And so Butler is a very quick defensive lineman, and he is someone who is very technically refined. So he does a lot of things well, technically, great fundamentals, the quickness that he has, the motor. He's a very high motor player, high effort player. And he can be a multiple down player in the NFL with the right coaching. I think he already is, but that 3 down all around player, I think he can get that with a little bit of coaching. And he just has to be able to remain stout. That's his next thing at the next level. What's the competition increase for him? I think it will be interesting to see. But I think really with the right team, with the right fit, and this is what a lot of guys do, right? Some guys have the potential on certain teams to be all pro players. Others on another team might just be bench players. I think with Butler, if he comes in to Baltimore, he's going to be on an offensive line where he will probably have a bit of opportunity to play depending on who else is there. And plus with his quickness and motor, that should get him snaps pretty early and often. And even if the Ravens do re-sign Calais Campbell or Brandon Williams, I think he'll still have a path to playing time on the Ravens. And depending on injuries, which let's hope there are none this year, but that could be a piece that the Ravens could use. Number 110, Mikael Wright, cornerback from Oregon. Now, right at the next level is a slot cornerback. You probably don't want to play him on the outside. It's just that he doesn't have a lack of length. He's not super bulky or anything. So I think this is a slot corner, replace Tavon Young type pick. Ravens need to replace Tavon Young, and I think Wright can be one of the better slot corners in the NFL within a couple of seasons, just because of the fact that he has really nice agility in short areas. He is very quick in coverage, and also he is a great tackler. He is a great tackler in the run game. He doesn't really miss tackles. He tries to really wrap up, and I think that's really great. So I think he fits a lot of what the Ravens are looking for. He can come in, provide that play. You don't have to necessarily move Marlon Humphrey in the slot or rely on a veteran slot corner. You can have that young guy who, again, it might take a little bit of adjusting to get to a slot level NFL type player early on, but I think that Wright is a really good risk to take if you're the Ravens, especially with, lack of slot corner options right now on this team. Then at number 119, D'Angelo Malone, the edge from Western Kentucky, is the selection. He's an athlete, 6'4", 250, CUSA Defensive Player of the Year in 2021. He had 88 tackles, 16 and a half tackles for loss, and 8 sacks. He's somebody who I think for now is going to be more of a project. He does have to develop into more of an every down player. He can play the run. He's not the best at playing the run. He's better more on the off-ball side of things where he's not getting directly run at and instead can kind of chase from behind. That's where his strengths are there. But, I mean, he has impressive closing speed, which helps him there. He's a high motor player, which we've talked about. He has speed, he has burst, he has quickness. I mean, the explosiveness that you can see out of him with his first step is incredible. So I like this pick as a high upside pick, especially if the Ravens maybe add more of a higher end edge rusher in free agency. You can take a guy like D'Angelo Malone and not necessarily put all the pressure in the world on him early on and say, hey, let's just develop a little bit and we can go from there. So I like that pick at 119. 128, Alec Lindstrom, interior offensive lineman out of Boston College. Lindstrom, to me, center at the NFL level. And he's somebody who I think can be that backup or slash third center on the Ravens, depending on what happens with Patrick Mccreary, if he's going to start at center or not. I think Lindstrom can be a guy for them. He's 6'3", 298. He's a really good run blocker. I mean, really, really good run blocker. Also solid in pass protection. So you want a guy who's going to be good at both those things. It's tough to have a guy who really is like top of the world in one and then just completely struggles in the other, because teams know and teams can game plan around that. So you want to have a guy who's technically sound, who's good in both run and pass blocking. Some of the things that he can do a little poorly, play too upright at times, and also doesn't have a ton of versatility. I mean, I said he's going to be a center probably at the next level. So I think it is a mid to late round pick. Lindstrom's a fine investment for this Ravens team. And then at number 139, Kobe Bryant, the corner from Cincinnati, 6'2", 195. We talked about Kobe Bryant before here on this show, playing with Sauce Gardner and Brian Cook at Cincinnati. Doesn't have the best tackling for him, but I mean, he is sticky in coverage. He is an athlete as well. Great ball skills, great tracking ability. So I think that for Kobe, a nice mid to late round investment. Don't have to put a ton of pressure on him early on, but can help develop him and kind of work on some of his limitations. Number 141, Chika Okonkwo, tight end from Maryland. How could I not take Chika Okonkwo after the Lamar Jackson endorsement? I mean, 6'2", 242, great in the pass game. Also has some upside in the run game, but for now is like he's, people classify him as more like an H-back, F tight end type of that. So I think that he could be someone who could be the third tight end that the Ravens have been looking for so long, next to Mark Andrews and Nick Boyle. I would love that for the Ravens. And then finally, 196, Cameron Harris, running back from Miami. Now, he's a little underrated in my opinion. He's someone who I believe could be that third running back for the Ravens you can get later on in the draft, so you're not necessarily spending a fourth-round pick on Dameon Pierce or Zamir White or someone like that. There are really talented mid-round running backs, but I think for Harris, he's somebody who has great speed, amazing vision. He's a very smart football player, can move side to side well, lateral agility also. He can make defenders miss. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. He isn't the best pass protector. I think he needs work there, but I think for a third running back that you can get late, you can't really do much worse than Harris, and I feel like you really can do a lot better than maybe what you could do in the 5th round. If you can get value for a guy like Harris instead of spending that 4th round pick on a guy where you're like, oh, maybe we can get the same value later on. I think Harris would be a great value pick for the Ravens. But still a ton to talk about. We're going to dive into your mock drafts after we get into our final break. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about here. But let me tell you about Built Bar first. And again, this is the type of year where people kind of give up on their New Year's resolutions. I've had multiple friends do it. But don't do that this year, and do it thanks to Built Bar if your resolution is to eat right. And if you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs, I mean, seriously, you are missing out. These are the first ever protein-infused marshmallows, so they're fluffy and they're marshmallowy, and they're very good, by the way, I'll tell you from me. And also, Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and the puffs are included in that. Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein, and my favorite, if you've been following along with me here, is mint brownie, but they also have others like coconut almond, and many, many more. So be sure to go to built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. And we're diving into now your mock drafts from Twitter. And again, how these work. I'm going to go down the list. No particular order, just literally the way that I see them on my Twitter screen. And we're going to dive into a couple of these here today. If yours is not read out here today, I apologize. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. I'll try to read throughout the rest of the week these mock drafts. So first, let's talk about one from Eric Clark, who has the Ravens taking Perrion Winfrey, interior defensive lineman at number 14, Chad Muma, linebacker 45, Nick Benito, edge at 76, Chicken Conquo, tight end at 100, Alec Pierce, wide receiver 110, John Ridgway, interior defensive lineman 119, Monteric Brown, corner at 128, Zach Tom, offensive tackle at 139, Damian Pierce, 141, running back, and Brock Hoffman, interior offensive lineman at 196. Okay, so Eric going a little bit of the unconventional route himself by taking a player who is not necessarily regarded as a top 15 pick in Perrion Winfrey, but Eric's high enough on him here where he selects him. And I want to say I like Winfrey as a prospect. This probably for me is more of a trade down scenario where I'm trading into the mid, low 20s potentially. But again, we've seen this situation before where teams really value a prospect and they want to play the waiting game. And all of a sudden, another team values the prospect and they either jump them or they take the player a bit earlier than expected. And then the other team who was like, all right, we're going to wait, they lose. They lose out on a chance to get a player they really like. So sometimes you just have to secure that. So I understand Eric's thinking there in terms of potentially it's just, hey, he's not going to be there at 45 and there's 14. So we're going to take him at 14. Chad Muma, I like a lot as a linebacker. I think he has 3-down ability at the next level if he can really hone in on his skills. Nick Benito is one of the more athletic edge rushers in this draft. I mean, seriously, he's all up in the athleticism for a player like him. And Chicago, we talked about, I like that pick. Alec Pierce, very interesting wide receiver selection there. Then Eric doubles down with the Ridgeway pick. So yeah, I like this. Maybe the one thing I would do is instead of taking a tight end super early in a Conquo, I would move and take a cornerback instead. But I like Monteric Brown a lot. So getting that at 128, I don't hate that at all. So I think, unconventional mock draft, maybe one that we haven't seen before here on this show, but I like the new ideas and I like having those new ideas come in every week. So Eric, thank you for this mock draft. I actually do like it. Next, we're going to dive into a mock draft from Mikael, who we have a trade. Let's get into this trade. The Packers received 14 and 76. The Ravens received 22, 53, and 59. And 22, Jermaine Johnson, the edge of Florida State, is the selection. Wow, that's a great pick. Travis Jones, defensive lineman, 45. Daxton Hill, corner, 53. Dylan Parham is the pick at 59, the guard. Then the Ravens trade Broderick Washington, the 100th pick in 196, for 87, where the Ravens take Christian Watson, wide receiver from North Dakota State. Number 110, Zach Tom, tackle from Wake Forest. Jelani Woods, tight end at 119. DeMarco Jackson, linebacker at 128. Tariq Castro Fields, corner from Penn State at 139. And Hassan Haskins, running back from Michigan at 141. Let me say, if Jermaine Johnson is available at 22, I'll be doing backflips. The Ravens will be doing backflips. Everybody's going to be doing backflips in Baltimore because I don't expect them to be there. But the saying I say is if the mock draft simulator gives it to you, you take it. So good job, Akai, for taking that Jermaine Johnson pick. Travis Jones has been a fan favorite here on this Locked On segment of doing mock drafts from Twitter. He's a great player. I think he'd be great. Daxton Hill in the second round. I don't think he's going to be there. I'd be doing more backflips. I'd do front flips now. We'll do backflips. We'll do front flips. We'll do all the flips if the Ravens can get Jermaine Johnson, Travis Jones, and Daxton Hill with their first 3 selections. I like the trade as well. You're getting value, only moving back 8 spots and picking up 2 seconds while also giving up the third. I think that is good value, although you got to wait a little bit from 59 to 87, but I'm taking that, especially if you can trade and get some more defensive line depth after trading away Broderick Washington. They do that there with Travis Jones. So I like Christian Watson a lot. Jelani Woods I like. Hassan Haskins, one of my favorite late-round running backs, although PFF doesn't really like him. But, yeah, I like this mock draft a lot. Good job here by Akai. And next, we're going to dive into a mock draft from Benji, who has multiple trades. The Ravens first trading up to number 5. They trade Miles Boykin, 14, 100, 139 in round 2 in 2014, but then trade back and trade the 5th pick to Seattle, get DJ Dallas, the 9th pick, 41, a 6 in 2023, and a 5 in 2024. So a ton of movement here for the Ravens. At number 9, they picked Trayvon Walker, edge from Georgia. Wide receiver, Jahan Dotson is the pick at number 41 from Penn State. Roger McCreary, pick at 45. Fedarian Mathis, defensive line at 76. Luke Fortner, center from Kentucky at 110. 119, Brian Robinson Jr., Alabama. Cordell Flott, LSU corner, 128. Noah Ellis, defensive line, Idaho at 141. And Chicago at 196, the Maryland tight end. Those first 5 picks. Well, actually, let's say the first 4 picks, all of days 1 and 2 for the Ravens. That is a phenomenal draft. You get a top flight edge rusher in Trayvon Walker. You can move around the line. Jahan Dotson, one of the better wide receivers in this draft class. Roger McCreary, I love in the 2nd round. I love him at 45 there. And Fedarian Mathis, who I think for a 3rd round pick there in the middle there, that's great value. So those 4 picks are great. You're getting value in the trades. The 2nd in 2024, I know that's going to hurt to give away, but to get a draft class like this, you also pick up Brian Robinson, Noah Ellis, Chigakonkwo, et cetera. Flawed also. You double down on corner. Good draft there by Benji. And finally here, let's get into a mock draft from Angel W, who says, my favorite mock draft I've done. So the Ravens trade pick 14, 119, 141, around 3 in 2023, and around 5 in 2024 for 18, 49, 98, and 101. Number 18, Nakobe Dean, the Georgia linebackers, the pick. 45, Jalen Petrie, defensive back from Baylor, is the selection. Kingsley Ngambare, South Carolina, edge is at 49. Kellen Diesch, tackle from Arizona State, is 98. Donovan West, center from Arizona State, is at 100. Max Mitchell, tackle from Louisiana, is 101. Isaiah Likely, tight end, is at 110. Then you have Mario Goodrich, cornerback, at 128 from Clemson. Ty Chandler, running back from North Carolina, 139. Then the DK Metcalf trade comes into full swing. You might have wondered where number 76 was. Well, the Ravens traded that and a round 2 in 2023 for DK Metcalf, 153, and a round 7. I think that's 229. So the Ravens, they end up getting Smoke Monday safety from Auburn at number 153. And so, yeah, look, I would trade 76 in a round 2 in 2023 for DK Metcalf. I mean, I'd do it without the 5th round and 7th round pick. I'd do it just straight up for Metcalf in particular. But I think Dean at 18, good value. Dean, to me, he's my 2nd linebacker behind Devin Lloyd, but it is very close, honestly. Petrie's a do-it-all guy. I like that a lot. Egnambare is someone who didn't have a great combine, but I think is better than what his combine showed. Then you get 2 Arizona State offensive linemen there with Diesch and West. I probably wouldn't take another tackle if the Ravens already take one at 98. I wouldn't take another at 101. So maybe they're doubling down on edge or taking a tight end a bit higher. Although I like Isaiah Likely. So I don't know. Maybe you're taking I think doubling down on edge there potentially would be the pick, or maybe an interior defensive lineman. There's no interior defensive lineman in this class, but I like this. I like this trade. And then also the draft class includes DK Metcalf, which I think, he's a pretty good player himself. So I like the additions the Ravens make here in this draft for sure. But that's all I have for you today here on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens talk. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.